Back in 2018, I reviewed The Alliance Alive for the Nintendo 3DS and boldly claimed the 3DS was indeed alive and well. Well, fast forward a literal year later and well, yeah. Thankfully though, NIS came and rescued the game off of the 3DS and brought it to the Switch, PS4, and a PC release later down the line. So I got to play the game again with about a year gap between playthroughs, and outside of the enhanced visuals, the game is identical to its 3DS counterpart. However, with time, my opinions on certain things are of course subject to change. Things I thought were tolerable then, I may not find tolerable now. However, I do not think my opinion between the two versions will differ all that much. But my perspective on certain things have certainly changed over the course of a year. So without any further ado, let's dive into The Alliance Alive HD and discuss if this game is worth your time playing. In the world of Alliance Alive, the human world has been divided by a race known as Daemons. Demons. Whatever, you know what I mean. After centuries of being at the bottom of the food chain, a resistance is forming to take back their world, but in order to do so, they need to forge an alliance to stay alive. Honestly, the story of The Alliance Alive is a real adventure, and it's probably one of my favorites in terms of a JRPG. Sure, it's nothing special compared to more established series, but the whimsical nature of the plot really keeps me hooked. And going through it again made me want to spend all of my free time exploring this world again. But we can discuss more of that in a bit. Let's discuss how it plays. The gameplay is your standard turn-based JRPG fare. You explore dungeons in an overworld to advance the plot, with a few puzzles thrown in for good measure. The layout of the dungeons are nothing special, and the puzzles are pretty straightforward. You just have to worry about random encounters as you go through. Although I have to say, these random encounters are much more annoying than what I remembered them to be. Like, the fights themselves for the most part are not that hard, it's just that they are, well, consistent. And by consistent, I mean you'll be consistently getting into fights more times than you would like. In certain dungeons or on a world map, you can run into several enemies at once. Thankfully, there is a chain mechanic that does reward you for getting into consistent fights in one go, so while that clears out the area faster, it doesn't make it less annoying. I was constantly finding myself into random battles every 10 to 15 seconds sometimes, but I guess the fights are a breeze to get through, so I guess it balances out in that regard. But I am much more of a fan of less enemy encounters chasing you, but having more in-depth fights, versus constant fighting and spamming the A button on ×4 speed. Sure, when you enter a new area, the enemies will pose a bit of a challenge, but due to how the game levels you up, the enemies will never truly scale with you. I guess we can use this as a segue onto the combat system itself. If you played The Legend of Legacy, you're probably familiar with the level up system in this game. As you use your attacks more and more, you will unlock and level up new abilities. Due to this, you'll never level up in the traditional sense, but your attacks will continue to grow more powerful, and you'll gain more HP and SP through this. Although this combat system is an improvement, it still has a few faults. As you progress through a fight, you will begin to level up a character's ignition, and once your ignition is leveled up, you can perform a final strike, or as I like to call it, an instant win button. This is a very powerful move that only gets more powerful as the game goes on. If your full team has a final strike at the ready, it honestly wouldn't be hard to destroy a boss with it, no trouble at all. So the only risk you have is trying to stay alive until the strike is ready. You do lose your weapon that performed the strike, but that is easily repaired, so there is no real consequence to abusing it. I often had to stop myself from using it just so I can see how powerful a boss really is. That all being said, the combat is still a fantastic upgrade over The Legend of Legacy, and if Fu or You ever makes another game in the same vein as The Alliance Alive, I hope they continue to expand it. What the remaster really excels at as well, being a remaster. The original release of The Alliance Alive was really held back by the 2040p screen on the 3DS, and it gave the whole game a blurry feeling. Thankfully, you can now enjoy this game at a full 1080p resolution with everything nice and cleaned up. The art really stands out, and I just spend a lot of time just exploring around the different environments. I guess I'll go on a bit of a tangent here, but I really do love the presentation of this game so much. While the cinematic cutscenes lack any voice acting, the world building in this game does a fantastic job of putting me right into the action. As you visit the other areas around the world to try and liberate humanity, you can't help but feel the sense of forbidden adventure, which is fair because you are the Resistance. But I have played a lot of games where you're thrown into this role, and none of them really hit all the notes properly like The Alliance Alive does. I guess this is what really hooked me into the game more than the first time around, just being able to clearly see this world and get a better appreciation for it. So, do I recommend this version of the Alliance Alive, or do I recommend the Alliance Alive in general? While the combat is a massive improvement over Furyu's last venture, the repetitiveness of a lot of the encounters may be a hard sell for some. Wrap that around that the game is charging $10 more for the 3DS launch price. That being said, I would definitely recommend this game to someone who's looking for a game to scratch that JRPG itch. While the combat is just as unbalanced in the player's favor as I remember, the story and world building of the Alliance Alive is just one of the most engaging and sometimes coziest environments I've ever played in. If you're looking for a new JRPG after finishing Dragon Quest XI's, and you're waiting for The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 3 to drop, you won't go wrong with this offering. Although for those on the fence, you may be best to wait for a sale if the full price scares you away. Even still, the Alliance Alive was a hidden gem for the 3DS, and it will continue to be one on the PS4, PC, and Switch. And that does it for our review of the Alliance Alive HD Remastered. Sorry for taking a bit longer to get this review up than I would have liked to, but a lot of things have come up lately, and I'm trying to get my content out to you guys as best as I possibly can. And I appreciate each and every one of you for supporting this channel. If you're new to my channel, finding out for the first time through this review, hey, be sure to subscribe for future reviews, commentaries, let's plays, and more. And also, if you have any comments or questions, be sure to leave them down in the comment section below. I would love to hear from you guys on this game. And I'd like to thank all my patrons on Patreon and YouTube members for making today's review possible. And as always everyone, thanks for watching.